Hi, everybody. My name is Michael Roberts with SPK and Associates. I'm here with Edwin Chung, and Edwin's going to talk to us today about a Bitbucket server to cloud migration. Ed, if you could give us a few words about the general size and the background about this migration, just viewers can understand the scope of this type of engagement.
Yeah, let me start with, we were successful. It got done. The customer is happy and their users are happy. It was a large migration featuring about 1,000 users and 500 repos and 200 gigabytes of disk, which we moved from Bitbucket Server up into Atlassian Bitbucket Cloud.
So you had mentioned when we talked before about this that there were some challenges that were found out after the fact, and then some challenges that were found out or you knew going into it. So if you could talk to everybody about some of those challenges, what are the ones that you found out as you got into it, and what are the ones that you knew going into it?
Yeah, we can talk about those. Some expected, let me start with expected challenges, right? We expected, hey, the first thing that I want everyone to know, and Atlassian knows this too, is that the Bitbucket migration tool provided by Atlassian does not move everything, right? They say when you go on the website, it doesn't move user permissions on each repo, and that they expect you to do that manually, uh, which if you have 500 repos and therefore 5,000 branches, it's not reasonable to do it manually. Atlassian is working on adding more features, right? Some of our results from this particular migration, like they've taken, and I know that they just updated the code to do user permissions recently. When I was asking them about this during the Atlassian Teams conference last month. So it's still improving. There's manual things. Please plan time for those accordingly. Some unexpected things happen, right? Hey, when you go into the cloud, sometimes you have a lot of changes. I think one of the biggest semi-unexpected thing that we had to overcome was the repo size limit. So in Bitbucket Server, you can allow, a person can allow bad practice of having very large repositories. But in Atlassian Cloud, there is a limit of 4 gigabytes for one repository, which is plenty if your users are doing good practice and not storing binary files inside of Git directly. They're using Git LFS or another solution. But that conversion, right? Maybe I'll call that data cleanup. This is a very common thing on migration, right? Before you do the migration, you've got to fix these problems in your source system in order to get over there. And Atlassian is very good about accommodating. By the way, they have a secret. Is this a secret? They have a secret toggle to allow bigger repos if you promise that you're going to fix it and make it a smaller repo afterwards. But still, you've got to fix the root cause problem, which not only takes time from during the migration, but it takes time to teach the users, right, how to use a technology or feature or function that they weren't using before.
Our friend Carlos Almeida would insert the phrase dark features here. That toggle. I know that Atlassian likes to have some of those get out of jail free cards, those dark features, so that partners can help resolve problems with customers. So yeah, I'm glad that exists in the interim. Big picture here, Ed. In terms of the migration, can you give the viewers an idea of what that looked like in terms of timeline from start to finish, and maybe a rough amount of time that had been spent on that type of migration?
We finished this migration in about 6 weeks, and that was uncomfortable, right? I don't recommend doing that. I recommend giving double that amount of time, because that amount of time is the correct amount for talking about what we're doing here, right? For us, we do a proof of concept, then we do a dev environment, then we do a QA environment. And for this customer and many of our customers, we do validation testing, formal validation testing on the QA environment, and then go live. Squeezing all of those technical things into 6 weeks can work, and it depends on the size of how many things. But I think the thing that really you need to account for is the user experience, right? We've got all these users and they're changing, and some people think, oh, I'm just using Git, and whether Git is pointing at here or pointing at there, it's the same, and that's not an accurate statement. Bitbucket adds a lot of features such as pull request approvers and Active Directory integration, right? it has a lot of features that aren't part of Git, and they change between Bitbucket Server and Bitbucket Cloud, right? Random trivia: Bitbucket Server and Bitbucket Cloud are not the same. They don't have the same ancestors, right? Bitbucket Server was originally called Atlassian Stash, and it became Bitbucket Server, and it actually is and Bitbucket Cloud was never Atlassian Stash. It is a fresh product. It performs much better. It is much better. It's much more efficient, but there are changes between those two different systems that you have to teach your users to accept.
And as we all know, change and change management is extremely difficult, especially when you're talking about large groups of people. And by the way, this is a Fortune 100 client that we're talking about here. So large organization with lots of moving pieces here, which is why Ed had to tiptoe through this migration in 6 weeks. So Ed, last question. Is there any other thing that we haven't covered today that you would like to share with the viewers about lessons learned and things that people should do, especially if they're integrating or working with an Atlassian partner like SPK to do this type of migration?
That's a great question. I recommend the following two things. The first thing I was going to say is I recommend doing a proof of concept. Run the Atlassian migration tool, get it into the cloud, get a trial license, and then go look at it, right? And what you're looking for is differences between your server or data center version and the cloud version. But really what I recommend is you should do an inventory of your server or data center version, right? Go into the server and data center, use the APIs, and pull a list of every user, pull a list of every project, every repo, every branch, every permission, get it down on paper, and that will help immensely when you're checking the cloud version to see like, hey, here are the differences, right? Because you ask a user like, what are differences? That's too broad. But if you've said, hey, this site has 1,005 users and this site has 1,003 users, now it's very clear something got missed, because you don't want to miss anything, especially for when you've got historical software development Git commit histories in there.
Right. Well, thanks, Ed. I appreciate your time here. This is it's good to get this stuff out because this is really helpful to our viewers. For those of you watching, if you want to see more of this content, be sure to connect with SPK on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, make sure you turn notifications on, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.